Thank you. Well, I have the honor of introducing the next speaker, Nteri Nelson. I actually first met Nteri around 1995, sharing a 5-year process in Southern California with Michael Robbins as he was teaching one of his many classes. And this one was a PhD class in esotericism. And if you look at Teri's bio, it is just lots of letters and degrees behind her name. It's amazing. Well, to me, that just signifies her very deep love for study and continuous learning. But the one thing that I really appreciate most about Nteri is her generous heart, her deep wisdom, and her golden path of service. She's just such a heart on the path. So help join in welcoming Nteri Nelson.
Mm-hmm. Take a moment here. Try to get a feel for where it would be best to stand. All right, that feels good. I get people to see. All right. Hotep, everyone. Hotep means peace and satisfaction. It's from the African language called Mecher, which the Greeks would later call hieroglyphics. It was spoken by the people in the land of Kemet, which the Greeks would later call Egypt. Its symbol is the offering table where loaves of bread would be placed. The intention and meaning being that to have peace and true peace and satisfaction, there must be reciprocal sharing of the bread, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So I greet you in the spirit of Hotep. The heart in the eye of peace, Hotep, is the name of this talk. And this talk will examine the planetary weighing of the heart of humanity. If humanity constitutes an eye through which the planetary Lord may see that which is held in consciousness, then we will seek to glimpse what that eye is beholding. As we approach the Lord of the world, we look for indications and ask, how well have we done in this world cycle in wielding the fourth ray of harmony through conflict, the ray of beauty? How are we measuring up in our stride for a greater planetary light and love? And through our inquiry, may more of the being of true beauty be revealed in the eye of the beholder. As we come before the scales and the Hall of Amente, in the ceremonial weighing of the heart of humanity, we encounter the deity or nature of Ma'at and the 42 laws of Ma'at. The deity of Ma'at was known for her ostrich feather that she wore on top of her head. So you can imagine the lightness of this feather. These were African principles for living in harmony. She was the symbol of justice, harmony, balance, truth, right relationship. And of the 42 laws, we would see that the 10 Commandment has its derivation. We can see here in number 3, I have not robbed with violence. And number 4, I have done no murder. I have done no harm. And number 20, I have not committed adultery, not taken the wife of any man, the husband of any wife. So here we see the entire body. And these laws were not just a daily practice, to recite at the end of the day. They were admonitions. I have not done this, I have not done that. So to review at the end of the day had their application for one's individual life. They had their application at the time of death, as one came within the judgment scene of the Hall of Nteri. But we're here to talk about the weighing of the planetary heart in this cycle, in this world period. So here, in this weighing, you have coming forth, in this instance, this is Ani, who's entered into the Hall of Nteri, the judgment scene. But this is a symbol of humanity, is humanity coming before the scales. And here on the left side, you see the heart, and which had to be held in balance with the lightness of the feather of my art on the right side. And if the heart was held in balance, one was found makaru, or true of voice. And of course, if the heart would clunk and leaden on the scales of my art, it was consumed by the devourer, or mit, this combination alligator, crocodile, nature, who sat on the bottom of the scale, meaning that one would have to repeat the cycle of birth and death until once again one could be found in balance. Now, what are some of the things that make the heart heavy and leaden against the scale of the feather of my art? Well, the things that make the heart heavy and leaden, because in this African spirituality, these were master forensic scientists. Everything was written in the organs of the body as to how we had lived. The story of our intestines told the story of what we had consumed. And certainly what was going on in our heart was told in that story. But what were the things that made the heart leaden? They were greed, cruelty, hatred, grief, mourning, anger, bitterness. You can just continue the list of the things that the pain, suffering, all of these things make the heart leaden against the feather of my art. So what is the heart? It is in the purificatory, fiery chambers of the heart that we transmute all of these coarse energies, all of this that we encounter, all of the impacts that we endure in our planetary journey that must be transmuted. And when in the fiery purificatory chambers of the heart, we undergo that transmutation, we create that luminous, lighted elixir of life, that healing balm, not B-O-M-B, but B-A-L-M, that may go forward and soothe and salve and save humanity, the world, her inhabitants. This is what we offer in our journey to do this work in the fiery chambers of our heart. And when our heart is found in lightness, as we have done that work and produced that pure gold, we move into the next chamber, of the Hall of Amente. And it is in this chamber that Haru, which is the Christ or Christ within us. Later this would be understood as the Christ within us. It is the Christ or the Haru or the Christ within us that brings us before the Lord of the world. This is where biblically we would see later the passage, no one can come before the Father except through the Son. And when we are found Makaru, we are brought before the Lord of the world. I want to talk about the weighing of the heart. In relationship, there are many topics that one could choose, but I want to talk about this in regard to race. And race, as we move from silos to solos to the chorus. How with race do we move from silos to solos to the chorus? Now, whatever we may understand on stellar or lunar levels, we must look at the outworking of race on a planetary level. Now, I will talk about race on a higher turn of the spiral and a lower turn of the spiral. But on a lower turn of the spiral, we see these seeming arising of these seeming distinct racial types. And right now, even as we speak, there's an exhibit in the Museum of Science in Boston, where I'm from, on race, which is deconstructing the whole topic, and really shows on a lower turn of the spiral that race has been an artificial social construct, economically driven, that produced a pseudo-race science for the oppression, exploitation, and abnormalizing of a whole race of people. At the same Museum of Science, there are many quotes of people who contributed. One quote is from Reginald Wacklifner, who is a professor of modern history at the University of Salzburg in Austria. And he says the following: amidst a swelling anti-immigrant mood, the proliferation of racist incidents, and a global economic crisis, Barack Obama's victory became a planetary symbol of hope. Newspapers all over the world announce a dream come true. No small feat, especially given the most dramatic plummeting of U.S. public image in history. To people all over the world, Obama's election represented one giant leap for mankind. These are beautiful images of a world full of hope. But what work remains to be done to make the planetary heart as light as a feather, as we invoke a spiritual renaissance such that peace may prevail through harmony, beauty, and art? Another quote at this Museum of Science is given by Tim Wise, who says the following: when Benazir Bhutto was elected Premier of Pakistan, it did not mean that sexism and patriarchy had been eradicated from Pakistan. Individual accomplishment says nothing about the end of an institutional form of oppression. And the same is true with regard to race. Barack Obama, President Barack Obama, said himself, in his speech, A More Perfect Union, the following. This is where we are right now. It's a racial stalemate we've been stuck in for years. Contrary to the claims of some of my critics, black and white, I have never been so naive as to believe that we can get beyond our racial division in a single election cycle or with a single candidacy. Okay, sorry. The Tibetan has said the following about race. Man is in fact a fragment of the universal mind or world soul, and as a fragment is thus partaker of the instincts and quality of that soul as it manifests through the human family. Therefore, unity is only possible upon the plane of mind. This must lead to the tendency to develop within the physical brain a conscious realization of group affiliations on the mental plane, a conscious recognition of group relationships, ideals and goals, and a conscious manifestation of that continuity of consciousness which is the object of the evolution at this time. He then goes on to say this very key statement. It will further produce the transference of the race consciousness from the physical plane to the mental, and a consequent solving through knowledge, love, and sacrifice of all present problems. This will bring about emancipation from the present physical plane disorder. Now, have we been experiencing a physical plane disorder? Okay. It must lead to the education of the public as to the nature of man and the development of the powers latent within him, powers which will set him free from his present limitations and which will produce in the human family a collective repudiation of the present conditions. I want to talk about this physical plane disorder because it's been within this physical plane disorder in our planetary world cycle that humanity has suffered a ma'afa, which is a key Swahili word which means Holocaust, or the African Holocaust of enslavement. It means terrible occurrence or great tragedy. It refers to the 500 years of suffering of Africans and the African diaspora through slavery, imperialism, colonization, invasion, oppression, dehumanization, and exploitation. This term also refers to the social and academic policies that are used to appropriate things African without proper attribution to their source. Spencer Wells, who many are probably familiar with, who was a geneticist and did the documentary Journey of Man, what he did in his genetic studies was trace the DNA of humanity back to Africa, and from there show the outgoing footsteps of humanity in populating the world. And in those outgoing footsteps, humanity encountered climactic conditions that then led to the seeming arising of these distinct racial types. In the Tomb of Ramesses, they depict the seeming racial types that they came in contact with at the time. And you can see here that for the Cometians or the Egyptians, they saw no difference between themselves, the Egyptians, and their cousins in the south of Africa. You see the same dress and appearance. And they saw the distinction in the seeming Semitic or Asian type and the seeming Aryan and European type. Spencer Wells, who is blonde and blue-eyed scientist, goes on to say, I have been humbled by the courage and resilience shown by our ancestors, and I have witnessed firsthand the powerful combination of intelligence in the human spirit. All those years in the lab were not wasted. The story carried in our blood is true. But there is one lesson that stands out from all others. It is a lesson about relationships. You and I, in fact, everyone all over the world, we are all literally African under the skin. Brothers and sisters separated by a mere 2,000 generations. Old-fashioned concepts of race are not only socially divisive, but scientifically wrong. It is only when we have fully taken this on board that we can say with conviction that the journey our ancestors launched all those years ago is complete. I want to talk about how we move from solos to the chorus. You know, in the 60s, there was this sensational singing group called the Supremes, one of my favorite groups, which was consisted of 3 female singers, and together the solo and the chorus were expressed. So we see on a higher turn of the spiral, with the arising of seeming distinct racial types, we have the solo individual self-conscious unit, which is allowed to play. It's a beautiful thing. The astrological sign of Leo gives each seeming racial type, African, Asian, Semitic, European, its full creative expression and assertion of will. On the other hand, the astrological sign of Aquarius is how the chorus is heard, how the collective good is achieved for the whole, how the chorus sounds the collective consciousness. It's the particulate and the collective, the particle and the wave. When we have particulate expression in full inclusion and circulatory flow, we produce the electromagnetic love and light which may then prevail on earth. We have the purificatory light, love fire, healing balm. We cannot have the chorus without all the solos. But how do solos become silos? On a lower turn of the spiral, solos become silos. And if you think about it, the word solo sounds like silo. Silos are artificial social constructs, economically driven, that produce pseudo-race science for the purpose of oppression, exploitation, and abnormalizing of a whole race of people. So, instead of the singing sensational group, the Supremes, we move to have instead Diana She emerges forward. And more Diana. And then later, just Diana, the one supreme. This is the epitome on the higher spiral. But as we move to the lower spiral, the one supreme can then become the one supreme race and the group disbanded. Solos become silos. What about the beauty of the rest of the notes, the rest of our sound? What do we now need to do so that we further produce the transference of the race consciousness from the physical plane to the mental, and a consequent solving through knowledge, love, and sacrifice of all present problems? Solos become silos. We are just now entering the process of dismantling and removing the rubble of institutionalized racism. If we removed the silos that have been creating separative consciousness of humanity on a lower turn of the spiral, what would this mangled artwork of old look like if we extracted it? What would this mangled rubble of bygone human compartmentalization look like? How vigorous are we in the removal of that which is unglamorous? Awful occurrences have happened within these silos. Silos warp and imprison the spirit of both blacks who were enslaved within them and whites who were encapsulated, enshrouded, and enarmored in supremacist thought by them. Like the rubble of the Twin Towers in 9/11, we must fashion that which is glamorous and of beauty as we dismantle and cart away the rubble of that which is unglamorous. The Supremes beckon us in one of their premier songs, "Stop in the name of love before you break my heart. Think it over." Me and my girlfriends would be on the corner and we would just be singing that one. The Tibetan has said, quote, "It must lead to the education of the public as to the nature of man and the development of the powers latent within him, powers which will set him free from his present limitations and which will produce in the human family a collective repudiation of the present conditions." Yet the educational systems are absent the rich contributions of African people. I feel blessed in Boston, where I teach at the University of Massachusetts in the Africana Studies Department. We must hear and understand the solo that Africa has contributed to this world civilization. We must hear and understand and learn that Africans charted the stars as evidenced by the zodiac on the Temple of Dendera. We must hear and see that the Divine Mother, Mary, Jesus, had a prototype in Kemet, in Osset and Haru. We must hear and see that one of the oldest languages in the world is Mecha Necha, later called hieroglyphics by the Greeks. We must hear and see that Hippocrates himself, who is considered father of medicine, said himself, "I am a student of the great Imhotep," who was a multi-genius in Kemet, in Africa. We must see and understand that the Sphinx itself and the pyramids and their mathematics bear witness to the particular contribution of the purely African race before the emergence of other races that go without attribution in our educational system. To be collapsed within a silo so the solo is not heard is for humanity to lose sight of the whole. To uncollapse our consciousness is for the particulate solo in all its beauty to be seen and heard so we can all see and move upon the connective wave. There are two ways that we can help. We can teach the world the proper attribution of African people in this world period through a system of education and through healing, to do the work of healing so that the heart is made in humanity, so that the heart is made as light as a feather. We need to look at those pieces of rubble that remain of institutionalized racism that still cause African people to be the most incarcerated on this planet, and to stop instances of police brutality. Are we ready to give each seeming distinct racial type its full Leo expression, so that the Aquarian chorus is then heard? Isn't that beautiful? Are we ready to hear the solo of each distinct, seemingly distinct racial expression in all the Leo glory, so that the Aquarian chorus may be heard? And when that Aquarian chorus is heard, in the words of the Tibetan, we will have government, politics, economics, and the social order readjusted upon sound, sane, and divine lines. Thank you.